tell, then you see the road. I'm out to my soul into the size whenever the smoke clear out of my face and my picture perfect. Do it. All of that green together, the truth, yeah. Tell you the
Hello and welcome back, fellow anime lovers, to Cypherfics. I am delighted to have you join us once again in the world of fanfiction and fantasy. This is the fifth part of, What If Harry Potter Enters Dragon Ball Super? Special note, this fanfic is written and a masterpiece of Gamer95 on FANFICTIONnet. Do check and support the author too. Now smash the like, share and subscribe button for more. Also press the bell icon so that you never miss such great parts. Thanks for the introduction. Now let's dive into the world. Well, perhaps the right term would be, this day, as this was still technically the same day as when she woke up, and found her sister now powerless. And discovered a whole another universe, and discovered Harry. And then got brought back to this world. Wow, there had been a lot which had happened today. To her, it was the most important day of her life, to everyone else, it was Tuesday. As they landed, 21 took in the sight of the CCHQ, remembering how she had staked it out in the past, planning the eventual attack she was considering. Trying to figure out how / where any security systems would / could be. Now, it almost felt intimidating. She knew the security measures were of no threat to her, but still, it was a large building with many blaring alarms that would go off if she tried anything funny, not that she would, and alert all the Z-Warriors. Okay, so maybe the concern was more directed at her sister than herself, she did not trust that reckless moron. She looked over at 22, who was now back to struggling to pry herself out of the flying nimbus, pressing her feet against THR cloud with all her might and wiggling her rear end violently in the air to try and escape. Speaking of her sister, she grabbed her by the tail and yanked her out of the cloud, holding her up by her tail like one would a possum. 21 wanted to say something, but honestly couldn't be bothered. She tossed her sister into the air, and let her land. Whump. On her face, great. Not what she intended. 21 sighed, and offered her hand, which was slapped away in frustration. Understandable. 21 muttered, conceding to the point. Okay, so I'm gonna go pay the DLVRY guys, and talk to Goten and Trunks. Bulma spoke up, getting everyone's attention. She looked to the androids and added, they can be a little rowdy, and they're always looking for a fight. Sounds familiar. 21 laughed gently, and then felt Harry tense somewhat. Bulma and the others saw it too, and realized just how bad whatever Harry had been through really was. Yeah, but they're good kids. She smiled. If they act up or get a bit much, just let me know. Or let Chi-Chi know. Ichem. If there is one thing that many of you mortals seem to cower in fear at, it would be Goku's wife. Beerus smirked. Android 21 tilted her head at that. Just why did the Z-Warriors fear Goku's wife so much? She didn't even have a high power level. Then again, sometimes a domineering personality could be every bit as effective as actual raw physical power. Perhaps Chi-Chi could effectively DSPLN her constantly misbehaving sibling. It was certainly worth a shot. She wagered it wouldn't be long until 22 angered the woman. She just prayed it didn't end up coming to physical blows. She honestly didn't think she could live with herself if her evil half ended up seriously harming Goku's wife, not that that was entirely likely at this point. She really needed to stop blaming herself for the things her sister did that she had no control over. Though that was rather difficult, because the connection between the two of them was still there, albeit a bit faint. She honestly felt incredibly embarrassed whenever her sister acted up, as if she herself was the one doing it. Whis seemed to notice 21's thought and smirked slightly. Oh, don't worry. While Chi-Chi can be intimidating to many, she's a very kind soul. Considering how gentle and polite he is, she'll probably adore him. 21 blinked, then smiled at that thought. That was a relief. Someone else to help Harry warm up and come out of his shell was appreciated. Plus, if she could scare her other half into calming down, that was also a plus. She was tired of bearing that weight alone. She let out a sigh and looked over her sister as she stomped over to the seashore and sat down to watch the sea with a scowl. All she could do was shake her head. What would it take to get her to be more social and friendly? Was it even possible? Or was she going to continue to be the same rude, harsh android she had always been? Harry, meanwhile, was looking around with a timid curiosity that made 21 feel somewhat better. It was clear he was tense as heck, and very, very anxious, but at the same time, she couldn't blame him. But, seeing that small bit childlike wonder was a good sign, as it helped her know that Harry was at least trying. And she could tell he was trying his little heart out, which made it all the more depressing that he only got so far before retreating into his shell. Still, things wouldn't get better in a day. She gave him a little squeeze and a reassuring smile. Remember, I'm right here for you. If you're starting to feel overwhelmed, then just come and get me and I'll take you flying around. Does that sound good? She asked gently. Harry looked up at her with a small smile, immediately feeling just that little bit reassured. He knew that he could trust her to keep him feeling safe and happy, but at the same time, he also wanted to try and feel that on his own he wanted to be stronger and happier. He wanted to make her proud. He didn't know that he already was. With everything he had done this far, from even meekly talking to the others, to trusting her thus far, it made her prouder than she could put into words. But she also knew telling him all that right now might overwhelm him, so she'd wait. She set him down and let him look around at the new surroundings, taking it all in as they waited. Harry didn't know where they were, and he hadn't seen a building like the one before him in his life. It seemed like a house, but also a school. Maybe some sort of business building. He hadn't seen a lot of buildings in his life, aside from the houses which were around his old home. But aside from Miss Figg's, he hadn't been to any of them, and they all looked similar to one another. He had no idea what to make of it. Did he want to go inside and see what was in there, or was he too intimidated by it? He had no idea. He decided to stay within sight of Miss 21 for the time being and just observe everything from within 5 feet of her. He would wait and see if any of the questions he had were answered without him actually having to ask about them, as he knew he was not to ask questions. Android 21 watched him with a small frown as he looked around at his surroundings, clearly curious and wanting to explore but also not wanting to be out of her sight. With a sad smile, she gently took his hand. I've been curious about this place myself. Let's check it out, okay? She said gently. He smiled at her. She suppressed a squeak of delight at his tiny smile, and allowed her to take the lead, holding onto her hand like it was life or death. Man, the kid really seems to like 21. Goku commented, watching them walk around the exterior of the building. I can't say it's for the best, though. Huh? What do you mean by that, Vegeta? I doubt you actually comprehend everything that's happened, so let me explain it simply. The boy has been hurt. Well, yeah. Shut up, Kakarot. I'm saying he's been hurt. To a point of SBMSN. I honestly believe the first person who showed even the slightest sign of compassion would have him following them like he is the android. It may be genuine compassion from her, but there's still the risk that it's another form of fear from him. So he only likes her because she was nice to him once. And now he's doing what she says because he fears she'll stop being nice to him. Yes. That's the stupidest thing I've ever heard. Goku scoffed, and Vegeta looked like he had been slapped. Where'd you get an idea like that? It's what Frieza did to the Saiyans. Vegeta stated, and Goku seemed to freeze. Beat them into SBMSN, then offer them some form out an outlet. One where he was in charge, though. Everyone followed, now knowing this was the way we had to do things. You honestly think Android 21 is attempting to manipulate young Harry? Whis asked, his tone more skeptical than anyone had beard before. He has power, but so does she. No. Vegeta said after considering it. But there is the risk of the other one trying such a thing. They all turned to Android 22, who was scowling at the ocean water. Yeah, she's one to keep an eye on, Krillin agreed. But I dunno, Vegeta, could she actually do that? She seemed to just rely on power. Without it, she's kinda stupid. Goku said. Everyone snorted at that. Goku was insulting her intelligence. That had to be the most degrading thing any of them could ever conceive of. Even more so than her constantly getting stuck. It was kinda true though. All she had done since her return to this world was actively antagonize people who could easily kill her with a literal flick of their wrist and get herself injured in the process, and she continuously failed to learn her lesson no matter how many times it happened. Her intelligence was lacking to say the very least. But to call her stupid seemed kind of a stretch. She made incredibly dumb decisions, but that was because she was unaccustomed to lack of power. She was used to being the strongest. Now that that was taken away from her, she had no idea how to respond to anything that was happening in her life. It was almost kind of pitiful in a way. It was like watching Vegeta from the times they spent during the attacks of the androids and Cell. Despite being outclassed, she just couldn't let go of her ego. And it would likely take something extremely major to happen to mellow her out enough to finally give up being evil. She was still evil, but she could grow. Why had Vegeta? The question came out of nowhere, and caused a few to pause and think it over. Why had Vegeta changed so drastically? Some may say it was because of Trunks, but honestly, that wasn't 100% true. It wasn't until he nearly lost him to Cell that Vegeta truly began to care for his well-being. The same could be said for Bulma. He had abandoned her for some time and just left to space. But, he had changed. Honestly, the Dragon crew always assumed it came down to a few things, Frieza being dead, and no longer telling him what to do. The fact he did have a son eventually mattered to him, and in time, the respect for Bulma's strength became genuine love. The memories of what he had done, compared to what Goku had done. While one was vicious and violent while the other showed compassion to the one who killed their race. It just seemed like many things mounted up until Vegeta almost had no other choice. Had he remained evil, most likely the Z-Fighters would have put him down, for good. But there was also the fact that he wanted to be stronger than Kakarot. Maybe that had been part of the change, knowing he needed to work with him to surpass him. Whatever the reasons were, it was clear that wouldn't work on 22. She was bitter, cruel, brash, violent, vulgar, uncaring, dismissive, everything the others she was made of used to be, just minus the power which made her a threat. But surely there had to be some degree of good in her, right? From what they understood, she had been alone with Harry for a time. If she were truly heartless, she would have just left him all alone there to fend for himself, yet she had made the decision to stay with him until Android 21 arrived to collect him. Surely there was more to it than fear of retribution from her better half, right? There had to be. Well, Goku thought so anyway. He was always the type to try and see the good in other people, even if there was clearly none to be found. He had tried to spare Frieza, after all, and only really seemed to kill when there truly was no other option. Such was the case with Cell and Kid Buu. He wanted to see everyone he met as a potential friend, a potential ally, and a potential sparring partner, and it was a constant source of frustration for the rest of the Z-Warriors, albeit one that had managed to secure them some powerful allies. When Goku looked at the depowered android, he didn't see a pure evil monster that needed to be stopped at any and all costs anymore. What he saw was a blob of pink clay that could be molded and twisted into something so much more than what she currently was. The potential to be a good guy was there because now she was in a position to learn. It's really pretty. Harry finally managed to say, looking out over the afternoon view leading to West City. 21 smiled and nodded in agreement, thankful to see the city still standing after the whole clone incident. There had been a lot of destruction, not that destruction was anything new to West City, but it seemed to be undone, most likely thanks to Shinron. It is, isn't it? 21 nodded, speaking calmly to try and keep Harry calm. She could tell by his tone and even more clearly by the tremble in his hand that he was trying his best not to give into a panic attack, but was only mostly succeeding. She was proud of him for coming this far, and sticking it out as much as he had, but she wasn't sure what to say or do now. Really, she didn't want to upset him more by asking him if he was okay, or asking about his past before he was going to meet more people, but she also didn't want to say nothing. Ugh, this was more perilous than she had expected. She decided the best course of action was to pick him back up and hold him close to her shoulder, gently rubbing his back to try and ease all of his fears. Okay, just try and relax, take nice, even breaths, that's it, there you go, see? You're doing it there. All better. Harry looked up at her and nodded his head slowly. Good, now maybe you're trying to take everything in too fast. She looked around to see what was happening. Everyone else seemed to be conversing, nothing major yet. Okay, now, just try to focus on one thing at a time. We'll do this nice and slow, a nice and careful pace that you're comfortable with, okay? Harry nodded his head slowly, took a deep breath, then put all his focus in one spot. He looked at the large tree outside of the giant house. He liked this tree. It was a very nice tree. It was big and sturdy and tall. Okay, he was done with the tree. What to focus on next? He looked out at the city, wondering what happened over there. Were there people who had powers there too? Maybe Miss 21 was right, his freakishness wasn't freaky, but normal. If he wasn't the only one here, that had to mean there were others with powers, and that would mean he wasn't abnormal, because having powers was normal. Right? He really hoped so. He also noted that the city looked really different than his old home. He had been to town multiple times being forced to get groceries or other supplies for his family, and this city seemed a lot more colorful, but also kinda strange. A lot of the buildings were different shapes and seemed rounded. He liked the looks of them, but it was also kinda weird to see for the first time. It also seemed so much bigger than the place he had gone to in the past. The town back in his old world had been very small and concise, only a few blocks with a few small buildings that had more or less only the bare necessities for human beings to live, just basic food shops and a couple cafes. It was boring. This city had buildings that, while not quite as massive as the building they were at currently, still towered over him, as well as any other building he had ever seen in his lifetime. He found himself wondering just what people needed such big buildings for. What purpose did they serve? Was it another food store or something else? 21 noticed this and smiled, noting she'd need to take him. Wait. She was pink. Was that going to be an issue? She hadn't considered that until just now, but the fact that she was a pink-skinned android would probably be rather noticeable when she was among humans. It now occurred to her that she wasn't sure if she could change back to her old human disguise. She didn't know, and didn't feel like she needed to try it this second, but that was something to consider. The last thing she needed was people assuming that Majin Buu had a sister or something. Wait, no. Didn't they erase everyone's memories of that whole incident? Ugh. This was confusing. But what wasn't at this point? Her whole life was confusing. It was a mess. But a happy mess. She bounced Harry in her arms as she thought to herself what an odd mother-son pair they truly were. They looked absolutely nothing alike, and in a way, they kind of made each other stand out a little bit, with Harry being tiny and plain and herself being rather on the tall side and, well, to be entirely frank, exotic in her appearance. Then again, it wasn't like she was the only unusual-looking person in the entire world. There were literal talking animals as plain, ordinary citizens out and about. Ugh, this would take some getting used to. But, she had Harry with her, so it'd all be worth it. Harry meanwhile, was trying to focus on something else. He looked out over the ocean. While he couldn't swim and somewhat feared the water, it looked really pretty. But, he also saw Miss 22, who just seemed really unhappy. Harry didn't understand why. Apparently, she had some powers, and they were gone now. But, she was also evil and those powers let her hurt people. So, by that logic, she shouldn't have those powers. But, then why was she unhappy? Did she like hurting people? Yes. But he didn't know that. It confused him, and part of him wanted to try and comfort her, but she didn't seem to like him, and he didn't want to make that worse. In fact, she didn't really seem to like anyone at all. Why didn't she want to make any new friends? Did she like being alone? Well, he certainly didn't understand if that was the case. Being alone was such an awful feeling, having no one there for you when you needed it, no one to hold you when you were sad or scared, no one to spend the happy moments, no one to just be with just for the sake of being with them. Miss 22 seemed to want this for herself, and frankly, that just left poor Harry absolutely baffled. After all, he had lived like that for so many years, and he absolutely hated every second of it. Is that what she wanted? To be upset and angry all the time? He couldn't begin to imagine why anyone would want that. Granted, he couldn't say, having friends is so much better, because aside from Miss 21, he didn't have any friends. He still didn't think he was normal enough for them, but he wanted to believe Miss 21's words that he was normal, at least in some regard. Should he go talk to her? No, that was stupid of him. She didn't like him, and if he tried to, she'd probably yell at him, and then Miss 21 would yell at her, and Miss 22 would yell at Miss 21, and then someone else would start yelling at them, and it'd all be his fault. He knew it was for the best to leave her alone, but at the same time, he didn't like seeing her sitting alone, all mad and grumpy, while everyone else was happy and having a good time. There wasn't anything he could do, though, and that was frustrating to him because it made him feel like he was useless. Well, he kind of was useless, just something that Miss 21 took care of. He did nothing. He suddenly felt depressed at that realization, and he wished he was useful. All he did was cook banana bread for the kitty man, and that was something he was absolutely certain anyone else could have done. 21 seemed to pick up on this and frowned, pulling him close and trying to comfort him. However, she noticed this didn't seem to do much for the tiny boy. Hey, sweetie. What's wrong? Harry looked up at her, then looked away. Hey. Harry, what's wrong, sweetie? And nothing. Harry mumbled. 21 didn't want to accept that as his answer, but she also didn't want to push things further. She looked over to her sister and thought things over. She hadn't said anything to Harry, but she felt like somehow she was connected to all this. Still, it wouldn't really be in good form to go over there and start yelling at her when she hadn't actually done anything. She just wished she would at least show a little bit more respect to Harry specifically. He had done absolutely nothing to her, and he was nothing but nice to her, yet she constantly rebuffed him. If she could learn to get along with others and actually be a decent member of the community, that would be wonderful. Truth be told, she did rather like the idea of having a sister to spend time with. Not as much as having an adorable son who was currently hugging her arm for protection in one of the cutest gestures she had ever seen, but still. Maybe, this was a terrible idea. But really, 21 knew she had to try something, otherwise they'd spend all day standing around doing nothing. Hey. She said calmly as she approached. What? 22 snarled back. You know what I'm going to say. 21 reasoned. I just don't get why you're so determined to ignore it. I'm ignoring it, because it isn't who I am. 22 seethed through clenched teeth, still not looking back. How can you live like this? We had power beyond what anyone could comprehend, and yet you'd throw it all away, for what? Okay, first of all, I didn't throw away our power. I am the one that got to keep it. But even if that weren't true, I still wouldn't hesitate to throw it away. And do you want to know why? Because I have an eye for the bigger picture, and I understand that there are things so much better than having raw power. 22 scoffed. Like what? 21 sighed. How best to put it? Like family. Like friends. Like love. People around you are important. A life lived alone is not a fulfilling life. What's the point of doing anything if you don't have anyone else in your life to share it with? All of that is beneath us. 22 scoffed, dismissively. You know it, and I know it. Before we were separated, why were you doing what we were doing? Because you told me to. 21 countered, refusing to believe that she had done horrible things because she either wanted to or enjoyed it. That couldn't be true. She refused to believe it. However, her sister clearly believed it. No, because you saw that you could do it, and went for it. Don't give me that whole "I'm not evil" CRP, you clearly were. You only changed once you got ripped out of me. If that's true, then I saw what I could become. Not what I had to be. 21 replied, keeping a tight hold on Harry. 22 looked down at him and rolled her eyes. So that's it then. You adopt a BRT and think it'll make up for all the death you caused. Please. Sooner or later you'll get bored of him and kill him, or something else like that. Harry's eyes widened at those words, and he went pale at the thought. Would she really do that? Just get rid of him? 21's eyes widened in horror at the cruel words that came out of her sister's mouth. But that horror was quickly replaced with a powerful fury the likes of which no one had ever seen, not even Vegeta or Beerus. There was one surefire way to anger any mother worth her salt, and that was to imply that she didn't love her child. Power surged through 21's body, more power than she had ever used in her entire life, as she glowered dangerously at her sister. She grabbed the red-eyed android by the throat and lifted her off the groin to look her dead in the eyes. She had choice words for her sister and she was going to hear all of them. This ends now, she said, her voice frighteningly quiet. I've tried putting up with you, ever since we got separated. Yet you act like nothing more than a spoiled BRT because you aren't allowed to be a genocidal monster. If you haven't noticed, and at this point, I'm starting to believe you're too stupid to notice, I'm the only one who is currently keeping you alive. Everyone else here would be fine with tearing your head off and destroying your body, but none of them are doing that because I keep telling them not to. 22 was slowly beginning to realize her plan of either gaining her powers back, or turning her good side against the Z-Fighters had pretty much just gone out the window in flames and fire more spectacularly than any time Yamcha tried to talk to a woman. It. This was that stupid BRT's fault. Her good side could be manipulated, turned about as needed. But this stupid boy was turning her in the wrong way. Why did she care so much? He was just a little mortal boy. A mortal boy who was abused daily by his own family, who was told every day he was less than human who. Despite being choked, 22 slowly started to realize that the kid had been through a lot. But so had she. Wait. Did that make them allies in some sense? In some twisted way, were they united by their tragedy? No. She used her tragedy to gain power. The boy didn't do anything with his tragedy. All he did was sit by idly and allow himself to be abused and tortured. He was pathetic. He was weak. He was worthless. He could grow into something better. He had the potential to become a truly powerful being with almost limitless possibilities thanks to his insane magical ability. He could do so much with Znai's power once it was finished being trained and perfected. He could do things that were useful to her. Maybe having him around wouldn't be so bad after all if he had uses and powers. 21 seemed to catch on to what her sister was thinking and she sighed and shook her head. Don't be an idiot, 22. You know very well Harry isn't going to help you do anything evil. Not only is he far too sweet and gentle to even consider hurting anyone, but I am going to raise him to make sure he knows exactly what the difference between right and wrong is. And besides, you've been nothing but mean to him. Why would he listen to you? 22 glared at her sister and gritted her teeth. She was such a damned pest. Always getting in the way, always ruining everything. She didn't deserve this power. She wasn't even using it properly. With great power, comes great responsibility to use it for all it's worth and annihilate all that is wrong with the world. Which is everything that isn't her. She simply went limp, feeling defeated. This was hell. That's really what this was. Being stuck with her good side, forced to see those who she wanted dead living, and forced to live without her powers. This was hell. That's what this had to be. 22 was angry, but honestly, was also tired, and she didn't know why. She felt like she had been going in circles as of late, and her sister wasn't going to listen to anything she said, regardless of how true or right it was. For now, there wasn't much she could do to try and change things, she'd have to just ride it out and try and plan something better. She went limp in her sister's grip and just let out a weary sigh. She felt her anger rapidly evaporating away until she just felt nothing. She didn't have the energy to be mad about her situation anymore. It was honestly as if all emotion had left her completely. Android 21 set her down with a death glare, still fuming with rage at the awful things she had said about her. You need to understand your place. Android 21 grabbed Harry and walked away as Android 22 stared blankly at the water. Learn her place. She hated her place. 21 looked down at Harry, and felt her heart or whatever would pass for an android's heart shatter when she saw how frightened he seemed. She didn't blame him, he was a sweet baby boy, and he had just been told the only person who cared for him may be faking it. 21 couldn't imagine what that would be like. Harry? No response. Harry? Can you please look at me? Harry timidly looked up. She gently grabbed his chin and leaned down to give him a kiss on the forehead before pulling away and smiling softly at him. Don't you listen to her, okay? She's just trying to get under everyone's skin, just like she always has been. I am never going to stop caring about you, so don't even think it. Harry bit his lip. He felt reassured. Just by the tone in her voice. He settled back down, feeling like she was right. If Miss 22 was gonna be mean to him, then he wasn't gonna be mean back. That was wrong. He wanted to help her. But maybe the best thing he could do would be to leave her alone. She clearly didn't like him, but she clearly didn't like anyone. So, he didn't want to make himself as the more hated one in her eyes by trying to interact with her. Besides, Miss 21 was already kind enough to him. Add to that everyone else he had met seemed nice enough. He wasn't scared he was gonna be hurt just yet. Still, Harry wasn't ready to lower all his guards, but he was at least feeling secure in Miss 21's arms again, so that felt nice. Maybe he could let them down just a little tiny bit while she was holding him. As long as he was safe and secure in her embrace, he had reassurance that no one would be able to hurt him. She would protect him if they tried to. She definitely would. She was much too sincere and caring not to at least try and protect him. All he wanted was to feel safe. Being happy didn't matter as much to him as being safe. Safety was a foreign concept that he was experiencing for the first time ever, and it was just so relieving to feel it after the complete lack of it in his old life, where he was in constant danger no matter what he did, and he had come to associate literally everything in the house with pain and suffering. Food's here. Bulma called from across the way, and 21 smiled, thankful she could finally put some actual food into Harry's little tummy. He was starved in every possible way, and while she wanted to give him all the affection, verbal and physical, he could take, he needed actual food at some point. So, she decided to rectify the past mistakes of his lack of eating by ensuring he had his fill. Come on, Harry. Let's go eat. 21 smiled. Only for Harry's reaction to hit her like a freight train made of feels. But, didn't I already eat this week? She closed her eyes as a fresh wave of emotional anguish washed over her. Oh, Harry, you need to eat way more than what I fed you back at that house. Eating only once a week, that's so terrible for your health, she said softly. She absolutely shuddered to imagine just what sorts of underlying health issues this little boy had, and all she could do was pray that his magic could fix them well enough. Harry was rather baffled. Eating more than one meal a week. It was unthinkable, inconceivable to him, absolutely unreal. As if eating something decent at all back at the Dursleys wasn't weird enough. Still, if Miss 21 said it was okay, he wasn't gonna fight her on this. He simply nodded and settled down into her hold as she walked over to the CCHQ. Honestly, this might be one of the more stressful moments in 21's life, as she didn't know who would be there, how they would react to her being there, how they would react to Harry, how Harry would react to all this, and how her sister would inevitably screw this up somehow. She didn't even mean that as a joke, she just knew 22 was going to start something eventually, and it was going to end badly. For her. She shook her head and tried to force away those unwanted thoughts. She needed to try her best to keep a positive attitude and try to show everyone that she was a friendly face with no intention of harming anyone. She felt less threatened by the idea of Piccolo and the two boys being there. They seemed to be all around good. But there was Yamcha, who was a bit of a loudmouth. Tien was a bit too blunt for his own good at times. She was really war-tied about any bad BLD between Harry and Majin Buu, though she did have to acknowledge that fear was a bit silly considering Buu was more patient than she gave him credit for. Ugh. Why can't I just relax? It's because you care. A voice spoke in her head, and 21 realized it was right. She did care. Not in the superficial way about how people reacted to her looks, but because she cared about being better. She wanted to prove she could change, that she wasn't a monster. 21 knew that was a very valid reason for concern. Add to that the sweet little charge in her arms, and that was another reason for concern. She also noticed Harry seemed pretty nervous, so at least she wasn't alone in that regard. She gave him a gentle squeeze and a small smile. Feeling a little nervous, are you? Well, if it makes you feel any better, I'm right there with you. Harry looked up at her with a curious expression on his face. That sister of mine has made a ton of enemies, and I look just like her, so yeah, I'm just hoping nobody gets the two of us mixed up. She explained gently. Harry tensed up at that. He hugged her protectively, not wanting anyone to hurt her. The small gesture melted her heart or whatever she had into a gooey puddle. Maybe it was the hug, or maybe it was the attempt at a determined look which came across as a tiny pout, but it was just too adorable for her to attempt to put into words. Don't worry, Harry. I think things are gonna be okay. 21 said, reassuringly. She knew full well they weren't. Something was going to go wrong tonight, but she figured she'd take whatever came her way and try her best to make it work, for Harry's sake. That's right. For Harry's sake. She told herself, feeling her confidence rise ever so slightly. Now, she understood why she was nervous. It wasn't her, it wasn't 22, it was Harry. She wanted him to have the life he was denied, and she feared her past actions may not allow that. Well, she'd just make it possible. So long as that didn't involve harming, killing, eating or destroying anything beyond a wall. She shook her head with a derp sigh and gave her boy another light squeeze. She smiled weakly and went off to join the others, looking around cautiously to see who had arrived. It was quite the party, oh dear. It seemed they had gone and invited the whole entire gang. Pretty much everyone she knew from the Z Warriors were there, as well as a couple people she had never been formally introduced to. She never thought it was possible for her to feel so small and out of place. These people all knew each other, these people all understood each other, and amongst this Tupif close, tight-knit friend who had known each other for many, many years, here she was. A former enemy that had fought by their side one time. And an adorable little boy too that might help her mingle a bit. Or judging by how Harry had tensed up and was now trying to hide in her arms, it might not. Whoops. Harry. 21 quietly spoke, rubbing his back. Are you okay? There's a lot of people, Harry mumbled. He wanted to be brave and strong for Miss 21, but there was wanting to be brave, and then the fear of societal interactions which Harry had built up from years of neglect and abuse. Also, he was a child, so naturally large crowds of unfamiliar faces made him anxious. Hey, remember what I said, take it one step at a time. We'll focus on one person at a time and work up from there. She assured softly. Harry nodded and took a deep breath. He looked around slowly at the large crowd of people surrounding them. He didn't know enough about people to know who to go to first, so he turned to look up at his caregiver. Miss 21. Who do you think we should meet first? He asked softly, causing her to blink and look around thoughtfully. Honestly, 21 was just trying to keep to herself, unsure of what they knew, or who had said what. She wouldn't be shocked if Goku had told everyone she was back, as well as her evil half, but she also didn't know if he had. So, she didn't want to assume everyone knew she was alive. Great. While she refused to show it, 22 was actually a bit anxious. Dealing with Goku and Vegeta had been bad enough. The perv old man and vertically challenged one was insulting, and Beerus and the angel were terrifying. Now everyone else was here. And she didn't have her powers. Great. What was she supposed to do? Just walk up and try and talk to them? No. She hated everyone in this room. But she couldn't do a dongade thing about it. She sighed and curled in on herself slightly as she stared out at the ocean in front of her. Right now, it was the only form of comfort she knew. She wasn't about to admit this out loud, but she actually rather liked looking at the sea. It was vast. It was aesthetically pleasing. It was powerful and insurmountable. It was much like what she used to be. A powerful force that could overwhelm just about every other minor insignificant thing with minimal effort. It was a natural power, one that would always remain consistent. Also, it was pretty to look at. She refused to admit it out loud under any circumstances, but she enjoyed the way the sun made the surface of the sea sparkle. 21 looked around, still trying to figure out how best to go about this. The last thing she needed was to make a bad first impression. Well, that, and upsetting Harry. Truthfully, she wasn't sure where to go from here. But, she figured she had to start somewhere. Get some water. She told herself. Just get a drink, and let the rest come naturally. That seemed like good advice. She looked at Harry with a small smile. I'm feeling a little thirsty, how about you? She asked. Harry nodded his head slowly. Okay. Let's go get a drink and figure this out after we deal with our thirst. Wow. Being nervous felt natural to her. Had her human counterpart been this socially awkward? Or was it because she was trying to be a good example to her child? Maybe. Maybe she just wanted to ensure Harry has good examples of how to live. Taking a cup, she filled it with water, and handed it to Harry, who awkwardly took it. Great. They had water. Why was this so hard? The two just stood around sipping their water and hoping to see someone vomiting up to them so they wouldn't have to be the ones to initiate conversation. After a point, 21 decided they should probably go and get some food to go eat their drinks. That was what they me here for, after all, and it was a huge spread. So, it really is you. A deeper voice spoke up. 21 turned around, and let a slight smile form when she saw Piccolo. Sure, the Namekian warrior was intimidating, but he was also rather calm, so she hoped those two things would balance one another out for Harry's sake. Why yeah, I'm back. 21 nodded. It's as confusing to me as it is to you. It's not that confusing. Piccolo shrugged. Dragon Ball. Most of us have died and come back by you coming back isn't the weirdest idea. Although you being split seems odd. 21 sighed slightly, the Namekian wasn't always one for small talk, and he seemed to have noticed her counterpart already. Still, better get this out of the way. Yeah, but I'm kinda glad I am. She admitted, somewhat awkwardly. We call her 22, and she's still as psychotic as before, but she's got no powers, no strength, nothing. I'm trying to keep her in line, but dash. You don't need to explain that. I've been putting up with Goku for almost 20 years now. Piccolo commented with a smirk, and 21 felt relief. That was one more person here who didn't want her dead 10 seconds after seeing her. Good. The Namekian approached and stopped next to her with crossed arms. She seems to be sulking. Guess she isn't taking not having any powers particularly well. Android 21 laughed softly and shook her head. That's putting it mildly. She did seem the type to act like a spoiled teenager when things aren't going her way. The Namekian noted. More like a spoiled 8-year-old. I really don't know what I'm going to do with her, Android 21 said with a sigh. Well, enough DSPLN ought to get her to straighten out sooner or later. Just keep being tough on her when she acts up and she'll have no coact but to stop. Oh, trust me. I know. The issue is, it doesn't seem to be working. No matter how many times she gets stuck in something. The Namekian shrugged, then cast a glance down at Harry. So, this is the power source everyone was picking up on a few hours ago. Wait, everyone picked up on that? 21 sputtered, taken aback. Kinda, yeah. Piccolo nodded. We sensed Shenron's arrival and departure, then there was something weird, we all felt it, it didn't seem normal, and then it was gone. But then another power picked up not long after and seemed to be just existing, for lack of a better term. The others wanted to look into it, but Goku and Krillin got called away over something, which I'm assuming was you. Android 21 nodded her head slowly. Yes, they showed up not long after we arrived, though technically Mstr Rashi found my sister and Harry. I almost feel sorry for her. Piccolo chuckled. It seemed okay, he didn't seem to try too much on her outside of some inappropriate remark. Seems he has enough self-restraint to avoid doing it in front of someone as innocent as Harry. But yes, 22 was definitely very perturbed by the time I managed to find them. I guess that's no surprise though. I have no idea how he keeps going. Piccolo remarked, then finally seemed to remember that 21 was holding a child, who was timidly looking up at him. Hey. Hi, Harry stammered out, clearly both afraid of new people, stuff he didn't understand, and the fear of saying something which would get him punished. 21 frowned, and put a hand on his back to soothe him. It's okay, Harry. She nodded. Piccolo quirked a brow, then smiled lightly. He's pretty quiet for a little guy. Kids his age are usually bouncing off the walls. There was the sound of a crash and a woman scolding a child who sheepishly apologized. Android 21 giggled softly. I can see what you mean. Two little scions must be a real handful. Harry thankfully doesn't have those kinds of powers. No. His power couldn't be more different, Piccolo mused. Piccolo seemed to pick up on something Harry was thinking, and said, I'm a Namekian. Are you an alien? Harry asked, trying to calm himself. In a sense, yes. Piccolo shrugged. Where I'm from, humans would be seen as the aliens, but here I guess I am. Oh, cool. Harry blinked, still speaking relatively quiet. I didn't think they were real. Piccolo raised a brow at that, and looked to 21, who shrugged. From what I've gathered, his home, the Earth I found him in, isn't as advanced as this one is. Piccolo frowned. So there's another Earth? Would you say it's in another solar system, or another dimension? 21 opened her mouth to reply, only to blink. That was a good question. She had just assumed she was dragged out of an entirely different reality with Harry. But could it be possible that there was another Earth in a galaxy far, far away? She knew it wasn't likely that even the god of destruction knew exactly every single planet to ever exist. It was a massive universe, after all. Anything was possible. I have no clue. She admitted. If I had to guess. Some sort of other dimension, because according to Whis and Beerus, Harry's signature is different than anything they've seen. Well, that much is true. Piccolo commented. He certainly isn't from around here, but I can't say he is or isn't from any of the other 12 universes. Harry had absolutely no idea what was being said right now. Well, it doesn't matter. 21 shook her head, matter-of-factly. He's here, I'm taking care of him, and he's already got people who have promised to protect him. Goku probably is curious about his power, might want to fight him even to dash. Not him, Beerus. Piccolo's eyes widened at those words and he looked at her as if she had just told him she was going to challenge Zeno to a head-to-head fight. Android 21 had to laugh softly at the look on his face and she squeezed Hera gently. He won Beerus over with food. He made some banana bread and it was so good that Beerus doesn't want to lose it. Piccolo blinked. That does sound like beer. Wait, did you say he cooks? Yes, I'm well aware he shouldn't be doing it at his age, but it's what his family made him do. TCH, what were those idiots thinking? Kid could barely even reach a stove. Piccolo exclaimed. 21 stifled a laugh. So this was the dad mode Gohan had joked about. Harry seemed a bit downcast by something, well, not something, the reminder of the someone he had to practically serve, and this didn't go unnoticed. Is he dash, Piccolo muttered, but had a feeling he knew what was wrong. He didn't need to read Harry's mind to pick up that there were plenty of scars none of them were seeing. If his size was anything to go off of, he was smaller than Marin, and seemed to be the same age. HRGH, never mind. It's probably what you're thinking. 21 conceded, then decided to change the subject. So, I've been gone for something like 4 months, but it was only like 4 hours where I was what's been happening as of late. Piccolo closed his eyes and thought about it. Not much, really. We're in a cool-down PRD where everything's peaceful. Oh. Well, that's good. Android 21 said with a nod. No major threats to the planet meant she and Harry could just relax for a time and feel safe, though knowing what this world was like, it was only a matter of time before something came up that would threaten the very lives of everyone and everything. Oh, how she dreaded the day that happened. There was no guarantee that she would be able to protect Harry when it did, and if he ended up needing to be resurrected by the Dragon Ball, who knew what kind of effect that would have on him. Actually, the Dragon Ball also posed a rather upsetting conversation. They could be used to bring the dead back to life, but she figured that sadly wouldn't include Harry's parents. As much as she'd love to give her child that, she knew it sadly wasn't a possibility. She also knew this wasn't something to bring up to Harry yet, as he was still getting used to everything here. It was certainly going to be a process, but she could tell that introducing him to others one at a time was the more viable option. He seemed to be growing a little bit comfortable around Piccolo, though that really wasn't any real shock to anyone in the vicinity. Piccolo was calm, collected, quiet and patient, not to mention good with kids. He was the perfect first step to warm Harry up to everyone else. He also seemed to be able to read Harry's subtle reactions better than 21 could. A fact which somewhat annoyed her for personal reasons, as she wanted to provide good care for Harry, but that was besides the point. Either way, the android had a suspicion Piccolo currently knew far more about Harry than most in this room, just from the way he seemed to tense, look around, and react to even a single word. Indeed, the Namekian was deep in thought as he studied the child closely. Judging by his general demeanor, it was all too obvious that someone had hurt him deeply in the past, both physically and emotionally. He flinched at unfamiliar faces, seemed latched onto the affectionate touch 21 was offering him, and he was clearly subtly relishing in all the words of reassurance and comfort the android gave him. Still, Piccolo didn't raise any questions. He had a feeling they'd learn eventually, and it would probably not help things. If you're wondering who to talk to, I don't know if you've met Gohan's wife, Videl. Goku's wife might be alright. Yamcha is kinda full of himself, but means well. The Namekian commented as he looked about the room, 21 following his gaze. He clearly knew these people better than most. And of course, there really isn't anyone better to talk to than Gohan himself. That kid was raised right. Piccolo said with a big beaming smile. Android 21 had to note the fact that he looked all too much like a proud father admiring the man his son turned into, and that wasn't too far off the mark, considering Goku seemed to mostly see his wife and son as just two more friends and didn't have the most mature mindset one needed for fatherhood. She really didn't understand how he worked. It seemed like he cared about them as friends. But there was so much more to being a parent than that. How do you know that? Her mind spoke up, raising a fair point. She hated to admit to it, but she didn't really seem to know a lot about being a parent either. Still, she wasn't sure what else to say to that, and she didn't want to pass judgment too harshly. Still, the Namekian brought up some good points. And that was why she had wanted to talk to him. He was a wise, intelligent figure that didn't mince his words and told it like it was. That was what they both needed. Someone who was honest and true, but not too blunt and harsh about it. Someone that could easily talk to them about their mistakes and tell them what they were doing wrong. Someone that could more easily help them through their faults than anyone else in the vicinity. Well, thanks Piccolo. 21 nodded. I mean that, this was helpful. Don't mention it. He smirked. Just keep your other half in line, and we're even. And now you're asking me to do the impossible. 21 sighed, half seriously and half joking. Piccolo shrugged, thinking about what he had asked, before he simply added. Well, Bulma got Vegeta under control, so I wouldn't say it's impossible. He remarked. Yes, but Bulma is much more assertive than I am. True. You are a bit softer than Bulma or Chi-Chi. Android 21 looked over at the two women in question, who were currently giving their respective husbands an earful for one reason or another. It's so strange to see those men so whipped. 21 giggled. Well, I'm glad someone did. Piccolo muttered, a little annoyed. Leaving them to try and figure things out would have ended with Earth destroyed, one way or another. That, and we'd probably be fighting each other every other week in some sort of tournament of combat. 21 sighed, she most definitely did not want Harry to end up in a life like that. If he wanted to train, she wouldn't stop him. If he liked fighting, she'd be cautious, but everything about him made it clear that wasn't who he was. He was very much a gentle and passive little thing that would more than likely hyperventilate at the mere thought of having to get into a fight with anyone. He was just too small and innocent to even consider such a thing, and at the very least until he reached his teenage years, she would hear none of it. No child of hers was going to be dragged off to train harshly and painfully in order to fight some major threatening villain. She didn't want her son to go anywhere near such things. She would fight anyone here to prevent that. Wait. Okay, maybe that wasn't the right expression, whatever. Her point stood. She didn't want her son getting dragged into all this, and the last thing she needed was to make him feel like he had to. 21 also didn't want him to grow up to be some sort of child soldier, forced to fight someone else's battle. She looked at Gohan sympathetically. That poor boy, she didn't know that much about him, but she recognized that under his friendly demeanor was a man haunted by the things he's been through in his past. It was very clear to her that he never wanted to be dragged into all the fighting and violence, and was dragged into it when he was very, very young. He didn't let it show, but he clearly had years of trauma. Part of her questioned how Goku was still married, or how his kids saw him as their dad after everything she had heard about, but then again, she wasn't exactly in any position to judge someone, now was she? No. She couldn't. Not when she had tried to destroy the Earth, and had more or less kidnapped her son. Maybe she should talk to him, or maybe she should try and talk to Goku's wife. Both seemed nice enough. She looked down at Harry, who seemed more willing to meet someone if he was with her, and she smiled at that. She was certainly very proud of him. She could tell he was scared and nervous, but she could also tell that he was trying really, really hard to get through it all because he wanted to make her proud, and the way she saw it, he was doing a very good job. Meeting Piccolo was just the easy part, though. But, as she thought before, she would hang back with him and allow the others to approach them, so as not to drag her son into a situation where he wouldn't feel comfortable. His happiness would always come first. Harry innocently nibbled on some food 21 handed to him as she approached Gohan, deciding to try and talk to someone who was more sensible, so to say. Hey, Gohan. She spoke up as she approached. The surprised reaction he had wasn't exactly what 21 was hoping for, but was probably better than she deserved, all things considered. Oh. Hello there. I thought you were over by the water over there. Guess that was the other one, huh? He looked outside with a small frown. She sure doesn't look happy. Must be hard to have all that power only to just lose it all at once. I almost feel bad for her. She must be feeling so helpless right now. No, she's just angry, bitter, and violent. 21 sighed, a bit annoyed, honestly. So, absolutely nothing new for her if you think about it for more than 5 seconds. She spoke her words without merit or kindness, but she did feel bad for 22. That shock of powerlessness couldn't be nice, but, as she's told herself time and again, her sister deserved it. Heck, she honestly deserved worse. But, that's not who she was. 21 was going to be better. Hopefully, that meant better at small talk, too. So, break any limits recently? She asked. Smooth. She told herself. Nah, my dad found some new power that according to Whis is beyond the level of angels, or something. Gohan shrugged, sensing 21's uneasiness and trying to placate it. We call it Ultra Instinct. Android 21 blinked and tilted her head at that. Ultra Instinct? Wow, that does sound impressive. Honestly, she was just shocked that Goku had discovered a new form that didn't involve Super Saiyan in any way, shape or form. And if being a Super Saiyan didn't have anything to do with it, what did that mean? Was it possible for any warrior to learn this new power? Could she learn it? Could androids even earn new powers and abilities, or were they stuck with what they were built with? She wouldn't mind getting just a little bit stronger every now and then to protect Harry. At that point, she noticed that Gohan was holding his child as well. Little baby Pan was peeking over with a curious babble, looking over at Harry with wide, innocent eyes. Gohan, at that point, noticed Harry. Hi. Harry timidly waved to Pan, who gave a garble in response and waved back. Ah. She's so cute. 21 cooed, smiling warmly at the sight of Pan. She hadn't met the girl, and only heard about her like, an hour ago, but still, the girl was pretty dang cute. Heck, even Harry seemed to think so. So, this is Pan. Yup. Gohan smiled proudly. Another half BLD in the family. He chuckled. It can be more than you'd expect though, he sighed, shaking his head. So, is this the kid Bulma mentioned earlier? Something about another Earth? Yeah, this is Harry. 21 smiled, introducing her son. Gohan got down to Harry's level with a small smile. Hi, Harry. I'm Gohan. Hi, Mr. Gohan, Harry mumbled softly. He looked at him, feeling his usual nervous, uneasy self, but after looking at Gohan, he suddenly felt those feelings melt away. He wasn't afraid of Mr. Gohan, not in the least. He gave off a very warm, welcoming aura that just made him feel safe. It was like he was just way too nice to ever be afraid of. And he was being extremely careful to avoid frightening him too, so that probably helped. It made sense to 21. He was a father, and an older brother. Plus, he wasn't focused entirely on fighting. Unlike some people. He had moved on, tried to make a life for himself, started a family. He had all this power, and yet, he didn't walk away from it, he just chose to do something else. 21 realized that was essentially the same thing, but whatever. How Gohan and Goku ended up so different was always a mystery to her, but she assumed it had something to do with Goku's wife. But she'd cross that bridge later. It was clear that the human genes residing within Gohan perfectly countered the natural longing for combat all Saiyans innately possessed. In fact, she wouldn't be surprised if there was more human in him than Saiyan. He completely lacked any of the negative traits the two pure-blooded Saiyans had. No one-track mind. No massive ego and need to prove himself. Just a humble and earnest family man working for a living. She could respect that. Honestly, it was what she wanted to be for Harry. Was that possible? She doubted it, but again, she would try. Really, no matter what happened, she was going to give it everything she had to ensure her son had the best life possible. Even if that meant dealing with her crazy half. Like it or not, they were stuck together. She was definitely going to need a job. Farming sounded fine, but she wasn't exactly experienced in it. She imagined herself working in an office cubicle, and stifled a laugh at the rather ridiculous thought of a pink-skinned bubble-gum woman with a long tail dressed up in the traditional office clothing. "Aw, who's this cute?" A new voice spoke up as another young woman walked over, smiling sweetly down at Harry. "He's so adorable," she said, her voice full of kindness. "Oh, 21. This is Videl, my wife." Gohan introduced the two. "Hi." 21 nodded. Hi. Harry meekly stammered out, trying not to let his fears get the better of him. Videl noticed his uncertainty and tilted her head to the side. Ah, the little guy's shy, huh? That's definitely a first in this friend group. Gohan chuckled. Yeah, the kids up until now have always been social butterflies. 21 smiled and nodded. Goten and Trunks were a very energetic and personable pair of friends. Hi, this is Harry. I'm 21. One introduced herself. Well, you certainly look younger than that. Videl laughed, as did 21. The compliment and joke felt nice, it felt genuine. It was nice. However, Harry spoke up, trying to not be the odd one out, and he both made things better in his own sweet way, and worse in a weird way too. I thought Miss 21 was younger than me, he mumbled. Videl and Gohan looked confused, and 21 coughed. It's nothing, I'm an android, so I'm not aging like humans. 21 said, and the Saiyan and human nodded. Well, that might be a little odd to think about. Gohan chuckled. Yeah, I can see it being a little strange for you Mothra caretaker to be younger than you on a technicality, but at the end of the day, I was designed as an adult, so that makes me older than him in spirit. She held Harry up and gave him a light boop on his nose with a soft giggle. It's not polite to ask a lady her age anyway. She said it as a joke, but Harry immediately took it to heart and swore that he would never ask a lady her age. He settled back into her arms, still nervous, but feeling at least safe with Miss 21. She really was too nice to him, he didn't deserve it. But, another reassuring squeeze made him remember that Miss 21 told him not to say such things about himself. Instead, he looked down at the little girl, Pan, he remembered, who was curiously reaching out to him. Eep. And who had accidentally stolen his glasses. He wasn't angry. Harry didn't even know what that emotion was, but he was surprised, and now a bit nervous, as he couldn't see too well without them. But, he also thought it was kind of funny, and he didn't know why. Pan looked at the glasses and studied them carefully, holding them rather awkwardly with her tiny hands as she curiously investigated them, trying to decipher what they were. She also tried really hard not to break them, as they were the boys and it wouldn't be very nice to break something that didn't belong to her. The boy wore them on his face, maybe she should try to wear them on her face too. She babbled as she set the glasses over her ears and nose, just like she had seen Harry wearing them. It was weird. Everything was all blurry now. Was this how the boy liked to see? Well, it was his choice, she supposed. Videl and 21 were both desperately trying not to laugh, while Gohan, someone who wore glasses, understood how this might feel. Unfortunately, despite his best attempts, Pan had a habit of grabbing his glasses. As well as Bulma's, Dr. Brafe's, and, well, any pair she could. She never broke them, but he always felt a bit awkward because of it. Miss 21. Harry blinked, looking around. Are you still there? I'm here, cutie. 21 smiled, hugging him reassuringly. By now, Pan surrendered the glasses to Gohan, who passed them to 21, who placed them back on Harry's face, frowning at the condition they were in. You should probably schedule him an appointment with an eye doctor at some point. I don't know what happened to put those glasses in such rough shape, but I don't think they're gonna last much longer. Gohan explained. The frames are cracked and chipped and about to fall apart. Yeah, they're probably digging into his nose a bit too. Videl chipped in. 21 blinked, then turned to her child. Let me just see your glasses for a second, okay, sweetie. She gently took them off his face, then grimaced and groaned sadly when she saw some rather unpleasant red rash-like markings on the sides of the boy's nose. Oh, the poor thing, she thought, heartbroken. Of course they were like this, why did she expect anything less? Ichem. We'll need to get you better ones soon. She commented, softly. She was doing everything in her power to keep both the anger and sadness out of her voice, and she was certainly trying. Oh. Okay. Harry blinked, again, unable to see, but unsure about how to feel about that. But, what's wrong with those? I can see with them. He commented. Yes, but they're hurting you. Those scars on your nose are from them digging into it, and you'd be able to see even better if you had a different, better pair. Your eyes change over the years, don't worry, we can try and figure something out. I'll make sure you're okay, the pink-skinned android said softly and reassuringly. Harry looked up at her and nodded his head slowly as she carefully slipped his glasses back onto his face. "Aw, she's so sweet," Videl smiled. She could see how much 21 cared for Harry, and honestly, she wouldn't say you were lying if someone told her 21 had Harry his whole life. Well, aside from the clear malnourishment and poor glasses. 21 felt a bit embarrassed. It was weird being told you were a good parent by someone who was actually a parent. Videl looked across the room and saw someone else. "So, that's also you?" she asked, referring to 22. 21 looked behind her, expecting to see her evil half fighting and losing, but she was leaning against a wall, ignoring everyone. "In a sense, yes. That is me." 21 nodded. "More specifically, that is my evil side. We call her 22. She looked over at her sister and frowned with a tilted head. "Now just why did she choose to come in here?" "I was so sure she was going to spend the whole time pouting outside," she murmured softly. She had known her sister didn't want anything to do with anyone in this general vicinity, the general vicinity in question being the entire planet, and it only made sense to her that she would spend the entire meal sitting by the sea. She decided it was best to ignore her for the time being and DSPLN her if she saw her acting out, that is, if someone else didn't DSPLN her in her stead. "Please don't make any more enemies," she groaned inwardly. She knew that was impossible, but still, she could hope. A robot or android who understood the concept of hope. That seemed ridiculous in concept, but to 21, it was reality. Putting his glasses back on, 21 looked down at Harry and smiled. It was oddly comforting to just hold him in her arms. He was so small and sweet, it was like she was holding pure happiness. Sure, you couldn't hold an emotion, but Harry couldn't be as cute as he was, but he was, so therefore, shut up. Man, I feel like there's so much I haven't even considered yet. 21 realized. Harry probably needed to see a doctor just to check things out in general, but then there'd be clothes, things he needed for himself. And she currently lacked any funds to pay for it all. That was going to be a bit of a mess for the first stretch of HWR new job as a mother, just being able to provide her child with the basic necessities he needed to live life. She looked over to Goku with a small, relieved smile that she could, at the very least, make some kind of living assisting him with his crops. She could at least afford a few things soon enough, provided all went well, and she would always be ready to take any job she could to earn money. Of course, that left the question of what her BRT temperamental sister would do for a living. She just didn't have the people skills necessary to hold down a job. It would be nothing short of a miracle if she lasted a single day. Again, one problem at a time. 21 reminded herself. Get through today, worry about tomorrow when it comes. Or at least, worry about what you can control for now. Like, the tiny boy in her arms who she loved more than anything. "It was great meeting you too." 21 smiled. "But I think there's some more people we need to meet," she remarked, and Gohan laughed. "Yeah, there's a lot of us." He nodded. "I don't even know if all of us know you're alive again," he mused. "Still, it's good to know you're back. And it's good to know he'll be well taken care of." Gohan nodded down at Harry. It's nice to meet you too, Mr. Gohan." "Mrs. Videl, baby Pan," Harry said softly. Pan laughed merrily and clapped her hands. Harry couldn't help but smile at that. He liked babies. They were nice and cute. 21 giggled and made her leave, and she bumped into something big, round and squishy. And very, very pink. Oh, you come back. We can have candy party after all now that bad guys are all gone. Came the voice of Majin Buu. Android 21 had to smile at the pink blob-like creature's enthusiastic greeting. Hi Bew. 21 said with a smile. It's good to see you again. Harry was utterly bewildered. Whoever was in front of him seemed to look a lot like Miss 21, were they related? He wanted to ask, well, honestly, he had a bunch of questions, but he was too nervous to do so. However, Bew noticed Harry and looked down at him. You have little person now? Hello little person. Hi. Harry stammered, a bit nervous by the enthusiastic tone of the newcomer. 21 couldn't help but laugh at that as she began introductions. Bew smiled and nodded. Bew didn't really get little people too much at first because they always wanted to fight Bew. But then Gohan and Videl have little person and baby Pan really like Bew, so now Bew wanna be friends with all the little people he meets. Bew explained cheerfully. 21 giggled into her hand at Bew's enthusiasm. Well, I think that's wonderful, Bew. This boy's name is Harry, and he could use a few new friends in his life. Okay. Harry Bew's friend. Majin Bew stated, and Harry seemed shocked beyond words. That was all it took. That's how easy it was to make friends. 21 didn't have the heart to tell him there was more to it than that, and 22 knew that if she did anything now, 21 would get mad, and Majin Bew would get mad, which would probably end badly for her. Really? We're friends. Yay. The boy clapped his hands happily at the idea of having another friend. Bew laughed and did the same thing. So what Harry like to do that fun? Bew asked with a tilted head. Harry thought about it. A lot of the things he did wouldn't really be seen as fun by most, but he did ask, so Ha had to tell him. I like cooking and gardening. Bew was confused. Harry cook. But that job for big people, isn't it? 21 wasn't sure how Bew was going to react to this information, and really, Bew was the most volatile of the bunch, but still. Yeah, well, where I found Harry, he was kinda forced to do those things. 21 conceded with an awkward look. He didn't live in a good place, he didn't live with good people. Ooh, Bew said quietly, seemingly sad someone had hurt his friend. Where? Bew make them pay. Thanks, but that's not necessary dash. No. No one hurt Bew's friend and get away with it. Majin Bew declared. Then saw 22. You. Evil lady. You hurt Bew's friend? What? 22 shouted, trying to defend herself. I didn't hurt the BRT. You hurt Bew's friend. Oh, CRP baskets, 21 knowing this wouldn't end well. For 22. No, wait, Mr. Bew. Bew stopped with a tilted head as Harry put a hand on his leg to stop him. She didn't do anything. Bew was taken aback. Oh. But who did though? Bew gotta beat them up. Make them know they bad. Harry hesitated. It was my uncle. Bew blinked. What? But that family. Yes, Bew, it really isn't right what happened, but sometimes being family isn't enough to stop someone from hurting you. But Bew doesn't understand. Why family hurt family? Well, some people are just bad. Just bad? Bew not like that, Bew not like that at all. Neither did I. Harry sighed. The atmosphere in the room went from concerned over Bew seeming angry, to concerned over Harry seeming downcast. But, 21 was quick to reassure him, and Harry seemed to perk up somewhat as she did so. Hey, it's okay. 21 said calmly. 22 meanwhile, was bewildered. Why had the BRT done that? She had done nothing but be mean to him, and he had the chance to send Majin Bew after her, and yet he stopped him. Why? Bew let out a soft huff. Bew wanna beat those people up really bad. They bad guys, and bad guys need good guys to come and show them they bad. HD said seriously. Harry smiled shyly and shook his head. You don't have to worry about that. Miss 22 beat them up already. She beat them up for a really long time. It was afternoon when she started and the sun was going down when she finally stopped beating them. Oh. Okay. Bew nodded, seemingly understanding Harry's logic, and he dropped any further plans to attack 22. For now. Knowing the evil android, she would probably anger him somehow, but 21 decided she would deal with that when she dealt with that. Honestly, despite knowing the history of Bew good and evil, she was surprised how fast Harry seemed to warm up to him. Granted, she didn't expect Harry to reject someone's offer of being nice to him, but still. Perhaps it was because of the kind of energy Bew gave off. Not the key kind, but the more philosophical abstract kind that one couldn't really see. Bew was, at his very core, like a big kid. He was technically many centuries old, sure, but one would never be able to tell just by looking at him. His innocent naivete and childish demeanor made him rather pleasant to approach, at least when he wasn't partaking in the more unpleasant aspects of being a child, such as selfishness and temper tantrums. Still, 21 would take all the help she could in getting Harry to warm up to people, so she was thankful for his kindness. Or, whatever exactly Majin Bew was feeling, or doing. Really, she had a hard time understanding him in some ways, but she oddly didn't much mind. He was simple, yet also quite complex. It was hard for anyone to truly understand him and the way his mind worked. It was quite impressive that Mr. Satan was so easily able to connect with him on such a personal level. Still, people could change, and 21 knew that better than most. At least, part of her did, as her other half seemed to stubbornly refuse to accept that. No matter how many times she was proven wrong, even at great cost to her own self. She really hoped her other half would allow herself to grow and change. She needed to see that the world around her was something appealing to be admired, and that the people around her could be great friends if she would give them a chance. Whatever. If 22 wanted to remain alone and hated, 21 guessed that was her business. She didn't like it, but she knew trying to force something may only be more problematic. Shaking her head, she looked down at Harry, who seemed oddly relaxed in her embrace. Ah, such a good boy, she smiled, patting his head. Bew was looking on with a tilted head. Harry looked sleepy. Must be really big day. Bew gets sleepy too when he has big day. Oh. Boy, give Harry candy. The Majin reached into his pocket and pulled out a handful of candy. Candy used to be pebbles Bew found on ground. Now they yummy tasty treats. Harry watched in amazement, before taking it. He hadn't seen someone do that before, and he had never been allowed to have candy before either. But, if a friend was giving it to him, he didn't want to be rude. So, he did what he figured was the most logical thing, and looked to Miss 21 for answers. The android smiled and nodded. Go on, enjoy it, Harry. She smiled, saddened she had to tell him this. Harry nodded and slowly outstretched his hand, saying a soft thank you as Bew put the candy in his hand. Trick or treat. Ahahahahaha. Bew laughed cheerfully at his own joke. Harry looked at the small handful of candy he was given. He had seen this stuff all the time, usually in the hand of his greedy cousin who devoured it by the truckload, but of course he had never gotten to have any. 21 watched happily as her son tried it for the first time. He seemed so enthralled with it, and it was adorable to watch his little reactions. 21 gave him a reassuring squeeze and looked around, debating who she had to introduce her son to next. She felt she had exhausted all the best candidates. Piccolo, Gohan and Videl were by far the calmest and most easy to approach of everyone here, and she felt she would have to wait. There was a fellow android here, how could she forget about 18? She looked around for a minute, finally seeing the blonde-haired android off to one side. She seemed to be talking to Bulma, and Bulma was then called away by someone else. Smiling, 21 walked over and nodded to her. Hey, 18. She smiled. 18 looked up from her drink, and despite being somewhat cold, her face did light up when she saw 21. 21. It's you. She laughed. It's great to see you. 21 smiled back. Likewise. I hope you're doing well. It has been a while, and things were pretty complicated back then, so I hope now that everything's calmed down and gotten simpler, we can get to understand each other a little better. Oh. And this is Harry. I'm taking care of him, she introduced the boy. 18 tilted her head as she looked at Harry with a friendly smirk. Ah, hi cutie. She smiled down at him. Harry had the typical reaction. Tensing up and shrinking back into 21's arms. He tried not to let it show, but he still wasn't used to these feelings. He was so used to being told not to be seen, and now, he was supposed to be seen. It made no sense. Heh, he can be a little shy. 21 commented, rubbing his back soothingly. He's a good kid though, just a bit timid around new people. 18 chuckled softly and nodded her head. Well, that's certainly unusual for kids. I've known Marin is a little social butterfly, and the two boys are just all over the place with that energy of theirs. Guess it is a nice little change of pace, though. It's refreshing to see a kid with a different type of personality than what we're all used to. Harry blinked at that. So he was different and she thought that was a good thing? Did everyone think it was a good thing? He guessed that made sense. He wished it did, honestly. To not be judged for what you were. To just be normal and happy. He wished that could be his reality. But he doubted it. He was a freak, and freaks, wait a second, Miss 21 hadn't called him a freak. Mr. Gohan hadn't, Ms. Vidal hadn't, the grumpy kitty hadn't. What if he wasn't? It seemed like there was no way that Miss 21 would set all this up, get all these people to be nice to him, just to pull the rug out from under him, right? So alright folks, that's all for today. Stay tuned for part 6. Do subscribe, like and share for more such videos. Also check out the story and Gamer95 on FANFICTIONnet. Press the bell icon to be notified first on release. See you in the next video. Till then, goodbye.